Welcome to another episode of Money in the Bank with Frank. Today we have Jim Durbin with us, new company in talent acquisition and consulting. Tell us about yourself a little, Jim.
I've been in recruiting and headhunting for 24 years now. I've kind of run the gamut. For those who don't know, there's lots of different kinds of recruiters. Mm-hmm. There's staffing firms. There's people who work internally for a company. We call that corporate. There's RPOs where they take the entire recruiting process and hand it to another company. It tends to work high volume. And there's headhunting, which is executive search and very top-end individuals. And then there's every mix in between HR and just different kinds of folks. So I've worked in all four categories over my career. I've run a marketing firm while doing it, and I've been fortunate enough that I was there at the beginning of social media, so we got to talk about it. When you talk about what you love, people like you, and you have different opportunities open up. So after being in for a long time, I just got out of a stint 5 years inside with RPOs, and I just wanted to, there's so many changes that are coming. I figured I'd go start something new. So I picked a new model. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I figure I want to start saying no to clients and yes to clients, as opposed to having someone else make those choices. So I started to go back and start Respondable.
That is fantastic. How did you get into, what was your impetus? I'm guessing you didn't go to school and say, I want to help other people get a better job.
Because everybody always apologizes and says, I fell into it.
Yeah.
And that's not quite what ended up happening. I was just messing around after college. I was doing catering, and then I got a job selling vacation certificates for a marketing company, 3-day, 2-night vacations when you buy a car kind of stuff. So
yeah.
I was in a boiler room, and we learned how to sell, and more importantly, though, we learned how companies make money. Mm-hmm. So I met a girl. I moved out to Los Angeles. And father gave me a job doing car touch-up, but he had this incredible financial system that showed how we were making more money because the way he hired artists, and we could actually walk through about how we'd sit down with the CFO of the dealership and explain how we're fixing their turnover, because the longer the car sits on the lot, the more that car costs them. And if we can so we were showing them how their car touch-up saves them massive amounts of money, while everybody else was doing kickbacks to a guy with a rag.
Yeah.
So the problem is I was young, and I was having too much fun in LA, so I ended up just looking for a job on Monster for sales jobs, and I saw some recruiting stuff. I talked to some people, and I got a job with a staffing firm because I'd done a lot of hiring in the last job. Mm-hmm. I thought I was good at interviewing. I was not. It takes a long time.
Practice.
You did. So the traditional, what happens is recruiting, they take young, bright people. It's called the tech system, and they just put you on the phone. You start calling resumes. You call people. You ask what they're doing, and then as you get better, they promote you into sales and then the branch management. And then the economy crashes, and you decide: am I going inside? Am I starting my own firm? Mm-hmm. Or am I sticking with the company? And in my case, I got into tech sales, did it about 5 years, and then I started writing. Mm-hmm. About what we were doing, and that's just when blogs took off. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, I'm going from this sales guy, just a typical tech sales guy making $80,000, $90,000 in 2001, to nationally known speaker. Mm-hmm. And the more that I was like, oh, this is exciting with social media. I had one of the top blogs in the world at a certain point. I'm doing social media.
Oh yeah.
There weren't a lot of them, in all fairness, back then. But my wife was a designer at AB, so we rolled out, and she started a firm. I started copywriting for her, and then we started doing blogs, and I couldn't let go of staffing because it was in my blood. Because once you've done it, once you've talked to that many people, it's hard to, because you're doing something really powerful. You're changing the course of people's lives. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to give up, but God, it's not hard to do, but the grind is really difficult. Because if I wanted to, I'd be $1 million biller. The fact that I'm not $1 million biller tells me that I can't do it. Mm-hmm. I know how. I know how to teach and train, and I can go in, and I'm a world-class recruiter. No joke, recruiting and sourcing. It's not even, I hang out with the best in the world, and we talk and we share, and they love it. I just can't do that day after day without trying something new. I have to do something new.
Yeah.
And that itself is its own piece there, but I hate people falling into it. I chose it as a sales career. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of fell in love with people are far more complex than systems. My grandfather was an aeronautical engineer. Mm-hmm. Worked for McDonnell Douglas, quit 17 times. He understood the way the air goes over the foil, which is a little bit of chaos theory, and it's not something people understand. Mm-hmm. But at least his world was bounded by things you could know. Human beings, They're like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. They just change. No matter what you think you're doing, they're far
Yeah.
more complex. So it's a much bigger, funner system.
What I
It's like the
find-
stock market.
Yeah,
the
when I
economy.
find out, basically one of the things that I like to talk about to just about anyone that'll listen is that you're either one type, which is the pull the lever, or you are more creative, in which case you could run the gamut of a lot of different things. And if you have that creative gene, then you do have a little bit of responsibility in second and third tier thinking, sales, period. And it doesn't matter what it is, because what we're really selling 90% of the time is hope.
Right.
Right, and the rest of it is the product, right? But for the most part, if you can sell hope and you can understand a lexicon, you can sell anything. Whether you
Exactly.
start
I'm
off with
100%
Cutco
with you.
knives, or
Yep.
rainbow vacuum cleaners, cars, trucks, life insurance, health insurance.
I've been assured that sales
finance.
is about hitting my KPIs next quarter.
I think the one thing that's important about the sales process is that you have to find something that you enjoy and believe in, right? And
Yep.
you believe in people, or you at least are interested in the complexity of people and putting them in their box.
If you're just doing numbers,
maybe.
I mean, what's the point of putting a couple of dollars on someone's? They don't even notice it. Like, you're not making a big difference. When I was doing individually, I could sit down with a person and I could see how it changed their life. Because there is hope is really, it is a powerful thing, because they're going to make more money, get happier, spend time with their kids, show off to the grandmother, whatever it is. When you're doing it at bulk, you don't get that. So,
Yeah.
but you get a tiny portion. You put 100,000 people to work, and you get a tiny bit of credit for that. So every fix in that system, you know there's an impact. Where it starts to break down is when your numbers look great, but the results aren't. And you're like, I am playing with levers and getting paid, but I'm not impacting anybody's life. That's what I'm doing with the time I have left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that drives a lot of people. Then sometimes you're poor, sometimes you're rich. It doesn't matter. If you're not doing something that matters, maybe it's just age at a certain point. I didn't used to think like this. I used to think I could just break and solve things and people would pay me. Now it's like, what is that second, third, and fourth level impact? Like, what are you looking for in life, and how's what you're doing fixing the people around you? And that's why I love recruiting. And it takes a while for people to grasp it, because you get so caught up. And a dirty little secret is a lot of people in my industry stroke out in their 40s.
Wow.
They're because when you're working with someone, you have to avoid emotional contagion. So if I talk to you and I talk to somebody else and like they're really calm and reserved, I'll have to stop and change, because I'll talk just like you. It makes you a good recruiter. You're mirroring things that people are
Sure,
saying.
right.
So
But
when
you're giving a lot of emotional equity.
and if they're calm and relaxed, or if they're a little mousy or something like that, you end up doing, your voice changes, your whole body changes. I didn't notice it until people started saying, you look different every time you're on the phone. It's like, well, I'm determining who I'm talking to. And but they stroke out because if someone's hopes and fears are on the line, and sometimes it worked out, sometimes it doesn't. I don't control who gets hired. But the scary part when they're going through it is you're adding that burden onto yourself, and that's full-on strokes from wealthy, hardworking people who just can't take that many emotions and didn't know how to stop. Because we don't get wins like you guys do.
See, tell me that one.
It's hard to celebrate a win in recruiting because let's say you get a job offer, right? Well, here's the problem. You've got to start. You've got to stay. Eventually, they're going to pay me. By the time I actually get the check, I'm on to the next thing. And even if it's an AR,
So you don't even get a chance to.
there's no celebrate. Because
Wow,
let's
yeah.
say you celebrate it and then you get hit by a bus the next day.
Right.
Or you hated it. Or the company goes bankrupt and now I got to figure out something else. So there's no real stop and start.
You have to
terms of
ride
the
the wave. You
contracts.
have to continuously ride the wave and never enjoy what.
You got to learn
reflects
to
your
be
labor. I get
stoic
it,
and
yeah.
have a good financial planner, which none of them do. Every one of them has IRS problems because you make 600 in one year and 100 in the next. You probably didn't plan that out very well. So, but then the second or third time you start something up, you get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the fascinating part about your job is when you were telling me that story, I'm thinking about, did you ever see the movie Spy Game?
Yeah.
Where it's like, the spy is going around the corner and he's got to like burn the asset and leave him in like East Germany. And like, he's just the tool. It's like you putting it in a different point. It's like, he didn't want to leave that guy there. And you obviously want to keep paying attention to what everyone's doing. You don't
And if
get
you-
that. You don't get the benefit of
And
like,
if you do, you're a bad recruiter.
Yeah.
So people, you know who likes recruiters? There's only two reasons why you like a recruiter. You like them because they got you a job. That's it. It's totally results based. Or you like them because they gave you a lot of attention. Here's the problem: if you give your attention to somebody, if you're nice, if they like you, you're going to be out of the business and you're not doing them any good. Most of the time, what you have to say is, "Shut up. You're a bad person. You need to fix what you're doing. You're going to lose your house. You're going to lose your kids. You need to settle down. Put this fantasy aside." Sometimes it takes hard talk. They don't like that, but they need it. You know, and everyone likes feedback. Do you like feedback after sitting down with someone? A lot of people do.
I do. But the feedback I want is a summary of what we talked about to make sure that they actually grasped it. Right?
That's a totally different thing. People don't know why they got a job or didn't. And the answer is it won't do you any good. The best thing you can do is record yourself during interviews, and then you watch it. Same thing in sales. You don't need a sales coach. You need to put a camera behind you and then sit and watch that over and over, because you know what was going through your head. You know you were slumping at one point, your voice going on, you were kind of lost your thing. You spun around with an answer that makes no goddamn sense why you're saying it. You're the only one who can do that. People don't want to do that, though, because then the problem is you. And that's the challenge with most of this stuff is, if it's the company that made the mistake, right, it's the hiring manager, it's
they
the
didn't
idiot
get me.
recruiter, it's
they didn't get me.
if it's you, that's a little harder to dodge. And a lot of this stuff is affected by your motives and your incentives. Are you intrinsically motivated? Are you extrinsically motivated? So you find yourself in a position where it's very hard to be honest with yourself, but you don't really know. So you create these myths in your head like, oh, I'm perfect for that job. How would you know?
Right.
How would you know that you were perfect for a job that you haven't worked at for a while?
How do you let someone down? What's a way, like, are you forceful about it? You say, look, you're not qualified for that job. Stop. How would
it depends on when in the process. So at the very beginning, I'll talk them through stuff and I'll just explain this isn't what we were looking for. And that's not hard at all. You just realize, hey, I understand where you're going. I see the plan here. I've got other people that I think make better sense here, but definitely follow up, and you're just playing to get them off the line because you don't have anything invested with them and you're not trying to get deep with it. But the middle part, when they're doing something, if they're volatile, the problem is they've been lying to you, which everybody lies. The question is, are they lying to themselves or are they lying to you? And that's a lot harder distinction.
Yeah.
But some people get volatile and angry. It's like that crazy spouse that all of a sudden, oh, I would love you, I would never do something, and then that mask falls and it's a psychopath in front of you. People do that.
You got to hide your crazy. That's what my buddies used to say.
Those people you actually don't.
You didn't hide your crazy long enough.
You don't confront because you've got to protect your own emotional stability, and they'll just go nuts. They want wanted attention, so you just have to close them out, and that's a legitimate reason to ghost someone is when they're a nut job, and there are plenty of nut jobs out there. There are people who literally are hiding drug addiction and they just never got caught. There are people who are literally mad. There are people who will come attack you or scream or leave nasty reviews. The hard one is when someone did a good job, they pushed it. They probably should have gotten the job and the company didn't. So those calls are tough because sometimes you become a therapist. And you're not doing yourself any good because how do you make that next call to here's some
I got you this guy, but I heard he didn't work out quite so.
That's so it really depends how much you've invested in them, and this is how do you maintain distance. It's like the spy game. How do you maintain distance? You just got to compartmentalize it, and then how do you not take that home? How do you change? You can't just go out drinking every night. It's not that kind of a job.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on who you're talking and how long you've been in it. So the funny thing about recruiting is it's like golf in the sense that you can think you're good at first because you were trained well.
Never in the history of ever.
Over time, you really feel, I know my stuff. I've been doing this 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. And I'm 20-something years into it now. And I'm still amazed at not only what I still learn, but how little I knew beforehand. Like you think you know the reason why. And then you find it has nothing to do with you. And this is a general problem with all training. Right. I've trained a lot of people. I got to be careful because when you're doing something and you have 10 years experience behind you, you get the nuances and the context.
Yeah.
You don't have that when you first start. You're just reading a script. And there's a lot of good you end up doing developmental psychology stuff after a certain point. No one under 30 really knows anything. They're not capable of knowing anything. They're just really good shadows. That is literally how management now has learned to approach it, which sounds terrible because you were bright in your 20s. Nope, you were just copying good systems.
This is exactly the contention that I have, is that the new useless guy, you're trainable, and you just need to show that you're trainable, and you learn in your 20s and you earn in your 30s. That has always been one of my mantras, and the reality of the situation is that you can be good at tasks when you're in your 20s, but you really, I feel, don't have the life experiences to make you understand the actual feelings that certain things require. Like, you may feel like I'm about to have a kid, I'm going to overbuy on a house. And then for someone like me to have to slow them down and say, whoa, you are in a sales job. You don't know what it's going to be like from 1 year to the next. You're at your highest earning level that you've ever done, and you want to buy this house, which theoretically could be appropriate, but you're not taking into consideration that you're going to have lack of sleep.
I'm not talking to you before I buy a house, because I still think I can just make more.
Right?
I haven't quite grown out of that yet, Frank. That's getting a little personal, man. That's starting to hurt a little bit.
And you're turning red, so it must be true.
Oh, no, it's 100% true. I just always assumed I could make more.
Yeah, well,
until you don't.
You might be able to, but life happens. Little things
hurt your back?
You hurt your back, yeah.
Your spouse decides this doesn't work for it because you hurt your back, and I thought we were going to Hawaii this year. This house is your vacation. By the way, something never to say to a spouse unless you want her to be an ex-spouse. This house was your vacation. Yeah, that doesn't fly well.
Yeah, I was trying to get away with replacing an Alexa that isn't working as a birthday present. That doesn't seem like it's going to work out so well.
That's a guy gift. You buy a guy an upgrade of something they have and he likes it. You do that with him when she's looking like, what do you?
Yeah, it didn't work out so well for me. But to be fair, this was my first wedding and first marriage. So working things out, learn it. Let's go ahead
also,
and keep that out
call
of
it
the
your
show.
first. Yeah.
Only. So with the market the way it is and the economy the way it is, and with 3.5% unemployment, I still hear people complaining about their jobs and how they're not making enough.
Right.
What are your thoughts on
inflation? Has crushed a lot of people. It really has, and it's part of it is things are so complex now. We don't count everything. Like, no one's counting their streaming services. I can't make my mortgage payment. Why are you still paying $185 a month for a gym? Like, they look at these things because it feels like letting go of those things is something that they give up. Because they'll joke about coffee, but coffee does add up. But
absolutely,
a $275 bar tab on a Friday night also adds up because you needed to go out and do something. So part of it is that people just got so used to having more, wages were going up, everybody's doing well. Part of it is the expectations. Houses, depending on where you are, housing in Dallas is rough. Apartments are really expensive. In the complex that I live in, you have to make $70,000 a year to qualify for one bedroom. That was not the case just a few years ago. So they're aware of that, but all the little things that you expect, and what happens, it's moving higher and higher up the chain. The other thing is a lot of people had jobs in that zero interest environment. They don't realize companies, it's not zombie companies, but they reach a point where a company would buy another company with debt and then just roll that debt down every year. And then they use that to push their stock up, and it looks like they're doing well. The reality is there's a lot of jobs that just don't need to be done, but traditionally they've been done. The margins aren't there. So I think of people serving food samples as an example. Why do we do that? And why is that third party with third party with third party? That's a big business. It implies 100,000 people. But if you can't pay them, if they're just making the same wages and driving around, why does it exist? Well, it's because nobody knows about the huge debt loads. How many companies that are out there wouldn't exist or provide a service, but if they actually had to pay the interest on the debt, to be bankrupt tomorrow? It's about 20%. So people are in jobs, and they're afraid of what to do. Many of them had jobs, like all these tech people. That was a big shock for them. They didn't do anything. Companies were overhiring, assuming there would be surplus. They never learned their jobs. These are the ones working 4 hours a day in their 20s, and now you've got a huge number of influencers and crypto people. So there was a point where crypto was doing so well, some would buy a little bit. They had $2,000, and they felt like a hero. They didn't go to work anymore. This is a huge problem in staffing, actually. If people, Choctaw casinos, you hire someone, they get $5,000 in tips in a night. They're like, this is great. What do? They quit. And then they just go back like a month or two later when they run out of money. The stimulus checks, like people don't realize that building habits long-term is hard. And so you've now got a bunch of structurally unemployed people. You have a number of people like SSI disabilities, others doing cash under the table, doing a lot of the gig economy Uber work stuff, because they're just really not fit for office work. Not because they couldn't, because management doesn't there, the jobs are bad. So now you've got this weird thing where you've got management thinking we need to hire, we need to add jobs, and people who don't want to do it, so it's a standoff. Do they need you more than they need them? And eventually somebody cracks.
So it's been my experience over time that people stay at a job because they believe the mission, they believe in what the company's doing. And I feel like that was in even 10 years ago, that kind of still existed. People wanted to work at Facebook. They wanted to work at Google. They wanted to work at XYZ established Ralph Lauren, a brand,
Abercrombie, yeah.
Abercrombie, right? And then when, not just COVID, when recently, however long ago, this generation of gig workers, if you will, kind of came out and they realized that I just want to make X amount of money so that I can have life experiences. I feel like there's not loyalty to any companies, and it's really hard to progress in a regular company if you don't have long-term people pushing it in that direction, right?
Yeah.
You talk about the shadow government,
Absolutely.
right? There's a president every 4 years, but the government keeps marching on. You have people that still work
Right.
and push the thing
So-
forward. And I feel like
This is a very easy understood thing. Company loyalty died in the 80s and 90s, when all of a sudden your fathers and grandfathers were all laid off after 20 years and nobody cared. And then
Right.
the boomers hit 50 and fired. That was the big thing in the Wall Street Journal in the 2000s. And so Gen X, there's not enough of us and no one ever talks about us. But the millennials grew up realizing there's no point in brand loyalty, because everybody they knew, even the ones who stayed, even they were told to stay with the job, it was very clear the companies didn't care. They were outsourcing everything, they were sending everything. And you see that enough times over 20, 30 years, you realize I'm going to live a little bit of life now. And their parents had money. So they grew up pretty wealthy, definitely in comparison to anybody else in the world and history has ever been. So they had this expectation that they can always be backfilled, but they didn't have the cash. Their parents had it. And they thought their job was just to go be awesome and it would work out down the road. And it hasn't. So this is why companies created employer branding, because the loyalty doesn't matter. So now they're trying to show how awesome it is to work for them. But because of social media and others, now we've always had a problem with celebrity in this country. We love to lift people up. We love it when they crack down. Like, Facebook's so amazing.
Yeah.
Ha ha, Meta. I mean, for us, that's hysterical. Well, Elon Musk is the greatest thing ever. Oh, he's terrible. Because that's what we do. We lift people up and then we tear them down, because we don't really have a class structure. This does not happen in other countries, by the way. It really is very much a U.S.-based thing, and big city, because our media is based in big cities. Our definition of what the millennials were came not from the people fighting wars, not from doctors or people going to community college or poor folks. It was rich kids who went to nice schools and then went to big cities and wrote about it, because that was the job they got, was in social media marketing and journalism. Journalism is now a wealthy man's game.
absolutely,
It was
yeah.
never the case before. So we have this weird brand problem. Every year, they put out a most respected companies that college graduates want to go work for. And it would not surprise you that it's the 100 most popular brands in the world. It's a dumb survey,
Yeah.
but that's who you know. If you say, hey, I'm going to work for Anheuser-Busch or Facebook, people know who that is. They don't actually know what it's like to work there. Now that they're running into that, now their hopes were raised, and they were
Right.
all these teachers went into tech, and then they got laid off, and they're like, oh, I had my dream job. My dream job, I got paid a lot, didn't have to do anything but could brag to my friends, and now it's
Right.
been torn from me. Well, how is that different than you working, making money till 37 and then getting laid off? People don't realize the average height. You might be able to tell me. It used to be that your top earning year was 37, 38. Like, that was the peak on average.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
I don't
little
know,
scary
yeah.
if you wait to
Yeah,
get married
especially
till
if-
31, 32.
Right.
You and your wife are making more money. You're not getting married at 22 with kids. She's making 70, you're making 70. You decide to get married, you get that bump, so you're taking care of things. She stops and stays home with the kids, and all of a sudden, you're not making 200,000 more every year. At a certain point, you crash, and she's like, "Why?" So I think that waiting longer to get married, waiting longer to buy houses, not understanding what it's like to live poor. I mean, when you're with someone who makes 70 grand, they're not saving 40,000 of that. They used to. You know,
Yeah.
that's what women used to do.
Yeah.
They
They used to save
take
their
a
money,
job,
yeah.
and the job was for savings and to prepare. Now, obviously, now they make money. There's far more equality and things like that, but we still haven't learned how to do that. So we're spending every dime.
Well, I mean, that has
desperate.
been happening for years on end. As Americans, specifically
Yeah.
Americans,
We
we
spent everything we
live
have.
to our means and we spend what we make. And that's why it's critical. And this is something I tell people that are in their younger years to save and get used to saving early. Put that money away in that retirement plan, in the 401k or whatever is available to you that you don't get a statement every quarter, right?
Right.
You know, maybe once
If you
a
don't
year.
see it, you don't notice it.
Because you won't feel it because you're used to spending every dime anyway, so you may as well put it away first.
That's what it is.
Right.
I think this is why tithing works too, but my cousin, I'm so jealous of him because
Mm-hmm.
he got the best advice from my grandfather. He got his first job at 15 at Rax, which is like an Arby's kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and he worked that. And my grandfather told him was, you need to save 20% of every paycheck. So his first $3.15 an hour job, he saved 20% of it. And then he did that all the way. He ended up going to school. He was an engineer. He worked in packaging. He did all this great stuff. And he always saved it. He got married. She saved 20%. They have 6 kids and they don't have any financial issues right now. They have
Yeah.
not, because they always, and when they got a raise,
Savers, yeah.
they had
They would live off of whatever they were making before.
but they had great
Yeah.
experiences. I think instead of spending 20,000, you know, they spent 16. Oh no, they wouldn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, because once that's done, that's not how I do it. I came from a different kind of family. We make it and spend it and freak out and then make it and spend it. Like we're the ones who literally wait to the last second to do the term paper.
Yeah.
And it works out because that motivates you, but then
Yeah.
all it takes is one mistake.
Right. So
One our series of bad
No,
ones.
I get it. And breaking that habit is critical. This is the reason that people that actually win the lottery are even
Yeah.
worse off after the fact, right? Because they're used to that kind of lifestyle. And there's nothing easier than separating a fool from their money. There are the whole
Yeah.
world revolves around that. You're never going to hear some of the saddest cases in the world whenever you win that Florida person that just won $1.5 billion or however much that money was.
Bottled Evian water, even though I know it says naive backwards.
That's actually
I still
good.
don't stop myself. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so but once you get to a point, there will be and could be a opportunity that changes your life, and you have a decision. You have a moment in time to make a decision. It's like, do I want to go back to that? I had that breakthrough moment today with that client of mine that I was telling you about. He was lucky enough; he inherited a little bit of money, and he didn't want to go back to that lifestyle where he was like worried about rent being late this month. And a acquaintance of his, friendly family friend, but you know, you see him a couple of times a year, is getting married in a place that is not conducive to his lifestyle, personality, nor his budget, but he felt obligated to go. And I was just walking him through, and he finally was like, I just can't make it work. I just, in my mind, like the relationship is important. I'm going to feel guilty and bad not going. And I finally brought him to the point, and he came to the realization that, like, how do I hate myself enough that I'm going to spend more or less 15% of what I have saved just because I feel bad about not going to someone's wedding when I can just drop $300 in the mail and say, hey, nice life.
It's tough. It's tough because you really do. Everybody wants you on that same. It's like the guy who wants to drink or the like, I don't want to drink. They're like, come on, don't make me drink alone. You're like, how about we take you to AA? No, you're emotionally abusing me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Peer
that's
pressure's
the
tough.
thing. It's like, you know,
Wow.
once you get to that moment, you have that moment to decide. And once you made that decision, hopefully in the right direction, that's when I tell my clients, you got this big windfall. IPO happens, something, and you have this number in front of you that you've never seen before. And I don't care if it's $1,000, right? You look at that, you want to spend it, right? Isn't that like our generation did? It's like, I'm going to Bon Jovi, whatever, you know?
I finally
It's like,
learned not to do that.
yeah, but legitimately, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at it for 10 days in a row and get jealous of that. Stare at that and know that you don't ever want it to be below that. And you may start saving.
It's
You know?
it's funny because it really is. It's how we act as human beings. It's the exact same thing as eating, losing weight, working out. If you just weigh yourself every day, or if you write down everything you eat, you'll lose weight. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to change your diet. You don't have to exercise. It's just looking at it every day. Put something. It's a filter on. You're like, okay, I'm a little up. I'm a little down. Because it's all about creating those long-term habits.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're just small choices. And of course, the difference, I don't know what the equivalent of sugar is for finance.
Coffee,
Yeah.
sugar.
But it really, once you realize that, the worst part is like some of us just, it's kind of fun to dance on the wild side. And what is life without a little risk? The problem is that
Don't get me
that's
started.
great
I'm the
until
last
you-
person to ask that question too. I've
You
taught
know?
these kids worst experience. They've got some great life experiences already.
Yeah, experiencing them isn't always that great. I
Hey,
think
look,
that's the
you can get
problem.
away with a lot more when you're writing the check. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean,
when you're paying the bill, you can get away
it's
with a lot
true,
more.
but then you whine about it like a little baby, and that's the worst part. Is it is hard. How do you teach this? They used to teach some of this in schools, but I guess they don't.
So they don't, and that's one of my biggest, I guess, issues. I've always wanted to be able to find a way to actually teach this, but again, when they're that young, you can learn how to count, and you can learn how to balance a checkbook, but no one ever told someone how to invest. No one ever explained to somebody how important it is to have savings, because that's not the machine.
I have a terrible story for you.
Yeah.
It's 1991. I'm going into college. It's a nice school out in Virginia, Washington and Lee, very high-end, top academic school. And in the bookstore, they had credit card applications.
Oh, yep. Here we go. Sit back, kick the feet up. Here we
For
go.
those who don't know, it used to be charge cards, and then they had some credit cards. But it's not like they just handed them out. They
They handed
started-
out more than one, but
Yeah, now they started doing that. So I got a Chase and I got a Citibank, and it was a $500 and a $600 limit.
Yep.
And I was in heaven. I could buy anything I wanted when I did it. And I wasn't irresponsible with it in the sense that I didn't like just spend everything. A little bit here, a little bit there. But bright guy on a full scholarship, taking courses, discussing literature, quantum physics, digging into chaos theory, computers. In 91, by the way. I didn't know you had to pay it every month. So, over the course of like 3 years, what happens is I'd go home and I'd work some of the catering. I paid off every 3 or 4 months. I'd pay the whole bill off and take it down to zero. I never looked at the late statements. I never looked at the fees or anything like that. And I'd see some of my friends, their limits going up. And I was like, well, that's weird. Why do you have a 3 or 4,000? I must be poor. They must know who my parents are, something like that. Because these rich kids, they had the credit cards. Their parents were paying. I had no clue. It wasn't until actually after college with the trash credit rating, because I had 300 delinquent, or 30, whatever it is, 4 years times 12 months of 50 delinquent pays per card.
Yeah.
I still had the $500 and $600 limit. But I'm actually kind of glad, because, bright kid, no one was ever taught any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I looked at the people who didn't, and then you hear about those horror stories for the next 5 or 10 years with people with $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 credit cards.
Yep.
Not on school. They were just living with those. So if I had known, it was actually a very cheap lesson in comparison to what other people doing, because it was a school bunch of rich kids. They just run off to go, hey, we're going to go to Baja, we're going to go skiing this weekend or something. And I'm like,
crummy credit when you're really young falls off pretty quickly.
yeah,
but,
wasn't that big a deal. Didn't affect me overall.
crummy credit when you're 40 is going to be hard to deal with. So yeah,
But you
that
have to
was
pay
a
a lot
cheap
more
lesson.
attention to what you do.
Yeah.
But I can't, because this is my thinking. If you got kids going to good schools and no one ever told them, what's it like when and you see people now who struggle with that, like the payday loans and stuff that are out there, or it just doesn't take much. All the Ferguson stuff that happened. Ferguson's in St. Louis. That's where I'm from. I know a lot of people that were involved there. That wasn't an angry ghetto. That was a working, poor class town. It was actually a mix of both black and white. And the problem is St. Louis had all these little municipalities, and they made money through traffic tickets. And if you ever sat through a traffic ticket court, it is horrifying. Because even when the judges and DAs aren't trying to do it, they are definitely preying on folks. It's a small limit, but hey, I got a $100 ticket. I didn't pay it on time because I only have $40 here. They extend. I got court costs. Now I got a warrant. Now my grandma has to put something down in her home to get the kid out because of a traffic ticket that just wasn't dealt with because you didn't have cash that day. And you can blame the people saying, hey, you have to deal with these. And then the more you go into court, you see it in family courts. You see it. People just don't grasp that. Why would they plan for the future? We can all be taken away with you for something you didn't even know.
If you saw yesterday on Bloomberg, they I'm sure there was I saw it on Bloomberg, but it was talking about credit card debt, and it's over $1 trillion. It's a crazy amount of money in credit card debt. And here's the thing: is that we had zero interest rates. This is another problem with the higher interest rates, which by the way, historically, not high, but to people that have never had interest in their entire lives,
Right.
5%
You
interest
can't say that.
hurts.
That's a boomer thing to say, by the way.
That's
it used
fine.
to be higher.
No. 5% interest when you were talking about not zombie
The
companies.
prices are so much higher now.
These
There's a
companies
big difference on that.
don't get paid, just like a small business owner, your monthly income could vary, right? You don't have a normalized cash flow, and a lot of times these companies are actually borrowing money to pay payroll until the money comes in, and that's why the
That
cost
is a
to
death
carry
spiral. Oh my
is
God.
huge. And that's what I'm starting to see here with this one, over $1 trillion credit card bills. Those are like 18%. Who knows what the average is? But talk about working class America who had all that stimulus money that's now gone, and actually now the opposite direction. Getting out of that hole, we know, is a lot harder because, again, as you said, you get used to spending $7.99 for XYZ on 15 different.
$140 to go to Chili's. And you're
Which,
like, when did that happen?
by the way, there's no new content coming out. You're going to start seeing people canceling memberships, but to the different online streamers, and then that's going to blow up Disney, which is then going to take the market down. I mean, all this stuff together.
We've got these $1,500 phones in our pockets.
Yeah.
We've got things like Spotify, and it becomes I don't buy music, I pay for Spotify. And you're like, you don't have a job. How are you paying for any of it? It's just hard for anyone to take that step back. And when they do get a job, the problem is they immediately start thinking that it's hard to live frugally. Your friends aren't doing it. I have friends of mine who are young. They know rich people and they know, but you can't even hang out with them. So you've got that problem of once you start to do well, if you save your money, you get a house, you're in a different class of people because these guys are scrimping and saving and like splitting an appetizer or pre-drinking and going to a bar, and because you were sitting at home, you don't have the problem. You have a house. So now you've got these social classes where you can't hang out with the people you were growing up with. You can't hang out with your work friends because everybody's made different decisions in life, and they want to pull you down like crabs in a bucket because they're just jealous of it. It is a huge. It's like rappers coming out of the ghetto. Everybody with their handouts. The same thing, lotteries, NFL players. What do you do with that? And it's very hard to be a rock in that island.
Yeah.
Because you know that tomorrow that could go away. So now you've got imposter syndrome. Now you start self-sabotaging. It's a lot. And, it's a... I think everybody just needs read more Marcus Aurelius, but that would mean they'd have to read.
Hey, thanks for watching The Merge. We've got a ton more stuff for you to watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere. Check us out.